Are you seriously going to eat, you fat blibbity blabbity blob? I mean, some of you might be like,
continual.
why would I want to start this?
Sensitive. She's sensitive.
You are listening to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast, where we share stories that are, you guessed it, unscripted.
That's the thing, this journey doesn't stop.
It doesn't really
right?
end. We have a general sense of the topic each episode, but really the whole point is just to show up and be authentic and let our inner child speak its truth. And I have continued to work through that story of constantly hearing, well, we don't want, got a hot dog on our hands. Yeah, guess what, Mr. Sabatsky, you do. So I'm so excited that you are here, and it is my hope that you hear yourself somewhere in the story so that way you can feel seen and heard as well. So let's start talking. Welcome to the Tammy Talks Unscripted Healing Podcast. For those of you that are listening for the very first time, thank you for tuning in. I hope you stick around. We've got a really great episode for you today. And for those of you that come back week after week after week, thank you so much. I thought of this earlier today. I would love to know who you are, because all I see in my little statistics and things are, if you're downloading from Apple or Spotify or the number of people that watch on YouTube. And I would love to be able to personally say thank you. And so if you would mind commenting on this episode or sending me a message or something like that, like, I would love to be able to personally say thank you, because you have no idea how much it means to me that so many of you keep coming back week after week. This is episode now 26. And so that's kind of a big deal, and that means a lot to me. And so I would love to personally be able to thank you. But getting on to today's episode, this is a redo. This was supposed to be episode 20, but when Don and I recorded it, we were hour and a half in, we hit stop, we said thanks and goodbye, and then I realized I had no audio to the entire podcast. And so luckily I got him to come back, and yeah, we recorded a really great one for you, talking about, his childhood experiences, obviously leading into adult life, but really what it was like growing up in a pretty tough home and what that was like. And yeah, so I'll save that for the episode, obviously. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about last week's episode with Krista and how that helped me get out of my own way. So for those of you that listened, and if you haven't, please go back and listen to that one. It's so powerful. It's a pretty heavy topic and subject, and it may be very triggering for some people. She talked about sexual assault. We talked about mental health and getting help, but oh my gosh, it's so inspiring. And so I hope that even if it triggers you in some way, that you listen, because there is a message in there for you. But how it helped me afterwards was realizing I needed to get out of my own way. And you guys have heard me talk about, my worthiness wound and like fear of abandonment and rejection and all those things. And those are active wounds that I continue to work on myself. And I know I'm in this role to heal those wounds. You don't get put in entrepreneurship to like coast by and not heal things. It absolutely exposes every wound to the depths. And especially now hosting a podcast and trying to fund that and make that something where it can get out there to more people. And her episode really lit a fire in me, because I realized I need to have resources available for people after an episode like that, to know where they can go to be heard and to get the help that they need. And I will also say that is a huge part of the work that I do. And sometimes I forget to share that as well. Like, that is when I do coaching with people, it is holding space for you and your story and helping you connect the dots and heal. And so a lot of what Krista had talked about is like the work that I do, but there are certainly other resources as well. So if I'm not in alignment with you, there are certainly other places and providers that are, and I want to help get those out there to people. And so I sat down on my computer that next morning and I started reaching out. I just started sending messages to different, companies out there that help with those things, that help with childhood trauma, that help with, child abuse and abuse in homes and domestic abuse. We talked about that with Susan the week before. And, sexual assault, how to have support for women, like where do you go, all of those things. And so I realized that this mission is so much bigger than me. And I needed to get out of my own way to be able to provide the support for those of you that need it. And even Don's topic tonight, talking about, separation and being a kid in the midst of all of that. There are places and resources out there for that as well. And so I am in a much different energy now about who I need to be reaching out to, the support that I want to gather for this podcast and for all of you. And so if you are listening and you know of a place or a person that I can connect with, please send them my way or connect us or something like that, because like I said, I realize that this mission is so much bigger than me, and it's time that I get out of my way so that me and little Tam Tam can really do the work that we're meant to do. And so, so there's that. And yeah. So again, thank you for hanging out with me as I heal my own stuff, as I'm having these conversations with people who are healing their stuff, and we're just doing the deal over here. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to the podcast with Don, and I hope you guys enjoy. It's definitely a little twist on my normal guest, but that's why I wanted him on, because I want everyone to have a voice and every perspective to be heard. And Don's just a very unique one, and he's a friendship that I treasure very much. And I feel very honored that he felt safe enough to share his story with me and with all of you. So enjoy. All right, take two.
Yeah.
Take two, everyone. So as I had mentioned on my episode 20, I believe, Don was supposed to be episode 20. And then I somehow did not collect any audio from his podcast. So he is back with me today to share his story again. And I wanted to go back. I had joked earlier, I want to go back and taste the nose. Oh, wait, I can't, because I can't hear anything. So I'm not that good of a mouth reader. So we are starting fresh. And we got a table all set up for Don. He wanted a table. And I said, whatever you need, whatever you want, because I owe you big time for coming back. So here we are. Got my nice little decorative plant here. And it's actually real. For those of you that are listening, you don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, so Don is back. And yeah, we might as well dive right in. Right?
Sure.
I caught him on a Sunday and he just took a nap, apparently. So, and I just got off the lake. So very different energies going on here right now. But we're going to bring you back up.
Yeah.
You bring me down, I'll bring you up. That's how that works, right?
I'll bring you down.
Oh, I know. Story of my life. So anyway, a little backstory about how Don and I met each other. We met at the gym, and your wife goes there as well. And shout out to Megan. I think Megan is probably one of my most faithful listeners. So shout out to Megan. Yes. And I love her for it. So what's been interesting about getting to know you is you're one of those people, if you don't judge a book by its cover. Because again, for those of you that are listening, you can't tell, but Don is all in black and all of his Harley, tattoos up and down his arms. And so it'd be easy to stereotype you, right?
Yep.
And in many cases,
It's by design.
and in many cases, it's part of that is very true. You are that guy, but there's also a whole other side of you that you don't let many people see. And because I am the annoying, I'm technically an older sister.
But I'm so big brother.
Yeah, sure, whatever. But yeah, I just over the years have gotten to know you and Megan a little bit more and learning about your story. And turns out there's a whole other side of you and a whole lot of depth to you and a reason that you are the way that you are. So for those of you that know Don, how would you describe yourself, Don?
An asshole? Is that someone lucky for you? Yeah. Pretty simple, cut and dry, black and white. I don't know. I don't know how else else I would say.
You certainly don't tolerate BS.
No.
That's for sure. And you can tell, when you go to the gym, you're there, you're working through stuff. And I think most people are, whether they realize it or not, but it's definitely, you can tell it's been an outlet for you.
Oh, yeah. And
it's certainly been an outlet for me. That's probably how we connected. You kind of know
Yeah.
the people that are going through stuff or working through stuff, and you just kind of like, and I think a lot of people in the morning, in a way,
Stay at 4 a.m.
you're getting up that early for a reason. Like, you know how important it is for you to do that. It's not just about like, oh, I got to burn calories today. Like, no, I need to clear some stuff so I can tolerate people today. I do it to like, so I can channel my highest self. Don's like, just so I don't hurt people in my job.
So I'm telling what you get fucked.
Yeah. So this is going to be a lot of, I'm not going to bleep this episode, but let's just be clear that
I swear a lot.
Auntie favorite word is the F word. Which I throw them out here once in a while as well. So.
Multiple uses for it, yes.
Personally, I love a good swear word. It just helps like with the energy, like what you're trying to get across sometimes. So I don't see them as bad. But so anyway, I'm trying to even remember when we kind of started to get to know like this other side of you. And I think it was probably, when my knee was bummed, I remember sitting on the recumbent bike as a like pathetic, like I was just in my own misery. And I think you guys had, I don't know if it was your son had stuff going on, and we just started talking about his stuff. And of course, I always take things to a deeper level. And what was going on with his son, I then turned into Don and his emotions. I got the middle finger a lot.
I quickly shut that one down.
But I kept at him and kept talking about, inner Don, and slowly but surely you kind of started to open up about your story. And so the reason that I wanted you to come on here was because, one, everyone has a story. And I think what you have done with your story is decided this ends with me, and I am going to change the course of my family and my son's life based on what my experience was. And I just want more people to hear that your past does not dictate your future, and you can make choices along the way to completely change that. Not to say that we still don't have our limits and our blocks when it comes to that. And then I look forward to pointing those out. He's like, I'm out.
Oh, in the channel.
No, but yeah, so I want you to share a little bit of your story, and so people can kind of understand that, again, not to ever judge a book by its cover, that everyone is going through something, whether you know it or not. And when you can step back and really look at people, why they are the way they are, and all of a sudden you like learn about their story, like, okay, this makes total sense. So take it away, Don.
All righty. Well, I grew up in a single parent home for the most part until I was about 8, 9, or 10 years old. My parents split up when I was 2. So I watched my mom work 2 full-time jobs, trying to make ends meet. That's kind of where I get the work ethic and all that thing from. But with that, her having to do that comes, she's more worried about bills and paying the household than it is really then being there for any of my emotional needs or just showing up for the most part. And my father, he left for good reasons, I would probably say at this point, knowing how my mother actually is. However, he just completely left. He didn't try to really keep that relationship with me. He didn't try to, be there through the times. He kind of gave me some pretty horrible memories of what a father shouldn't do. Basically what I always tell people is my parents didn't teach me what to do. They just taught me what not to do.
Yeah.
So I've always just tried to do the opposite of what they've done, except for take that work ethic part from my mother and just kind of run my life that way.
Yeah.
Kind of the reason why I don't put up with BS is because that's all I've had my entire life, and I don't have time for that anymore. You know, I got too much on my plate to really have to tolerate other people's mess, you know. So
how old were you when they separated?
I was 2, and they finalized it when I was 3.
Wow.
So I never really had a home that was, you know, stable.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and there's a lot to that. I'm just from the physical standpoint, right, of just feeling physically safe in your environment or feeling stable and secure. But if you've listened to this podcast enough, you know that on an energetic level, when you don't feel that sense of safety emotionally, and if you're walking on eggshells or you don't know who's going to be yelling or all the kind of things, like as a kid, oh man, like that creates all kinds of stuff. And so ego finds a way to protect for you really, 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 really early on.
Yeah. I learned to grow up real fast.
Yeah.
From being left home alone at 8 years old, sleeping in the home alone at 8, nobody there. So just not being a kid, I wasn't really able to, I didn't have that opportunity. And to tell you the truth, I don't remember a whole lot from my childhood at all.
Yeah.
You know, and as I've gotten older, doing the research and all that, I've come to find out that's from trauma. And it's like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember us having a conversation at the gym.
You know, and
yeah.
It's, yeah, but it also, it sucks.
Right.
To not remember your childhood, to be like, people name off their school teachers. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I cannot do that. The only things I can vividly tell you are like a few football games or whatever when I was a kid, and that's about it.
Right, because that was the one time you got to be a kid.
Yeah.
So of course that's like locked in your memory. Everything else, I mean, that's one way that ego protects, is to dissociate and to check out and to go another place. Like, I don't want to be here. This is too hard. Like ego, like, well, you can't. I mentioned this in last week's episode with Krista, and that it almost like puts your inner child in the basement because like, this isn't safe up here. Yeah. This is way too hard. Kids should not have to deal with this. Kids should not have to hear this kind of stuff. You should not be put in the middle. So you stay down here where it's safe. I'll go up here, and now I'll be like the tough kid. The protector. I'll be this fiercely independent, overly independent person. I will never ask for help. Like all of those things. I won't feel any of my feelings. I won't show any emotion. Right? Because it wasn't safe though. And he didn't have that kind of support. Ego's going to shut all of that down. So it makes sense.
Yeah, I'm really good at being a duck on the water, you know, so really good at just blocking out a lot of stuff.
Right.
Because I don't, like I said, I don't have time for it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, but most people, they're not able to do that. So I kind of try to take the negatives from when I was a kid, try to turn them somewhat positive to now. You know, some people can look at it negatively. I'm not going to let it bring me down anymore.
Right.
You know, that's one thing that, you know, I can do.
Well, and I think that's basically the theme of this podcast, and everyone that's come on here is somehow turning pain into purpose. And for you, that was, I'm going to be a better dad, and I'm going to show up for my family and provide for them in ways that I didn't have that kind of support. And so one thing that you had shared on the last time we recorded this was, you know, we talked about like that abandonment wound and how many times that got triggered for you growing up and what that was like when an adult can't show up for you, when they can't keep their promises to you. I don't know if you want to share any of those stories.
Yeah. So probably my worst one, we were living in Mount Horeb at the time, and my dad lived in Monroe, and it was his weekend to come pick me up, or, visitation time or whatever you want to call it. So the agreement is my mom was going to drive me to Monroe and he would drive me back on Sunday or whatever. So meetup spot was at a grocery store there in Monroe, and she drove me down there. It's like a 45-minute drive down. Get to the store, and then wait. We wait. It's waiting like 20 minutes now. And my mom goes in the store to call her or call him and say, hey, where are you at? Doesn't answer. She called again, didn't answer again. So then she comes out, wait another 20 minutes. And this goes on for about 45 minutes.
Yeah. And how are you feeling sitting in the car this whole time?
Well, terrible.
Right.
You're super excited to see, your dad. You're a young boy. And
right.
You want to spend time with your old man. And so that was, a pretty long ride home, and another time was, I was just.
Well, hold up just a second.
Okay.
Rewind. So, again, I think for those of you that are listening, if you can kind of imagine being that kid in the back seat, again, having that excitement and hope, kind of oh, I get to spend some time with my dad. This is great. And then to just slowly start to feel that dwindling. But this is also where ego will start to create these stories about why he didn't show up. And oftentimes ego tells us a story about something like we did that, we weren't good enough, or that he doesn't love me enough, or I'm not important enough. And again, I don't know if you even remember having any of those thoughts, but that's generally kind of what ego does. And that's when you start to shut down any of those feelings or ever wanting to see him again.
I can't put my finger on how I was feeling at the time. I know it wasn't good.
Yeah.
But growing up, because I think I was maybe 5 or 6 at the time.
Yeah.
So as growing up, I kind of thought I wasn't good enough and to be loved or cared for, or anyone care about me at all. So I kind of just went through life just working and just kind of keeping myself busy that way. But when football started when I was a kid, man, that was my only outlet. And then I discovered the gym when I was in the 7th grade, and things really started putting themselves together a little bit around that age. And then when I got out of high school, when I was just developing what I was wanting to do, I mean, I really kind of started just forgetting about all that, you know what I mean? Trying to just put it behind me.
Yeah.
But then it really got triggered when I had my son.
Yeah. Kids will do that to you.
Oh yeah. Cause then it's then it hits you like a ton of bricks. Cause it's I remember 2 days into, me bringing my boy home, and, he's 6 days old. I don't cry very much. That day I did.
And
I remember looking at my wife and I'm like, how do you leave this?
Yeah.
That was and she's just in a deer in the headlights, I don't know what to say.
Right.
And I didn't really need her to say anything. It was just how. And that, from that day on, it's just one day at a time, just being everything that he wasn't.
Right.
That's what I promised myself, that I'm never going to be him no matter what. I'm not leaving no matter what. And I put up with a lot of shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Getting to today.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade it for anything right now. I just wouldn't trade anything for what I have now.
Well, right. Because now you look back and all of that made me who I am to now be this kind of husband, this kind of dad.
Yeah.
And so that's where there shouldn't be any shame in our stories. And the more we can look at them and find the gifts that are wrapped in there, the more you start to be like, wow, I really overcame that. And there's a purpose in it. And I think even your purpose of your story goes even beyond your family, and it goes into your coaching and just the way that you show up for people that you care about. It's very evident that you will show up. And I had mentioned this maybe on the episode 20, I don't know, but like if I were ever in a bind, I know I could call you and Megan up in a heartbeat, and no doubt you two would be there. No doubt.
That's I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's so many people like I know, like, oh, call Donna Megan. Like that's just the kind of people that you are. And it's because of what you've been through, and you know what it's like to not have support and people there for you. And so you flip that around and like, here's how I'm going to show up. And you guys just do it in a different way. Like the way that you show love, and like you're just aggressively going to be in there and help people. And you're right, like kind of bulldoze anything that's in the way.
Yep. That is perfectly how to say it. We're not like, fluff. Get up. My hello in the morning to you is give you the bird. And it's my hello.
This is true. So every the gym, it's like, who can give each other the finger first? And that's how we say hello. And it generally, like, if people that don't know us probably see that, are like, what's wrong with you? Like, this, you can't say hello. So, but I wanted to even go back after your dad didn't show up that one day. When I say one day, when it probably sounds like it happened a lot more than that. Yeah.
Not as traumatic, but
right. The first time, yeah.
Still able to remember the other times, yes.
And again, I know it's hard to remember back to that moment, but I'm just curious if you had a conversation with your mom about it, or if it was just like you both, because she's frustrated too now. Like she's probably just as pissed off as you are. But like,
my mom wasn't someone that you were going to talk with.
Yeah.
So my mom wasn't someone that you take my personality and you amp that 10 times. That's her. Like how she's just with the emotions, she's not gonna cross that path.
Right.
And from my understanding is she's been through some shit too in her life also.
Right.
But it's still, a kid needs that
right
at the same time. So it's it's hard to
absolutely
be mad at her for it, but
at the same time, you still, that's just it. And I love that you said this, and it just gave me goosebumps. Is yes, she's going through her own stuff, but yes, a kid still needs that. And that's where at some point us as adults have to really look at our own stuff. And I had my daughter on the podcast and talking about, when I was going through stuff, like I was completely checked out. I was not there for her, and I didn't know how to emotionally regulate. So I wasn't creating a safe foundation for her to feel safe coming to me for stuff. But when this is where you decided to make that change. Like, okay, just because my mom didn't have those tools doesn't mean I can't develop them myself to then provide them for my family.
Right.
And you're right. Like you can almost release some of the, I mean, you're going to always feel how you're going to feel, but hopefully it releases some like anger or sadness or resentment when you realize like, oh, wow, like they obviously had their own childhood wounds that completely blocked them from knowing how to show up for me. They didn't have those tools. Same thing with your dad. When you he was so blocked himself that didn't know how to be that kind of dad for you.
Right.
And when you can start to see like it really had nothing to do with you and everything to do with him and his own childhood and how maybe he was raised and how he wasn't shown love, but you decided to break that cycle. And that's what I want people to get out of this is regardless of what your circumstances were, there is a choice in being able to look at that and choose different.
I don't know how to elaborate on that one, Tammy.
Well, I appreciate you reflecting on maybe where your mom was coming from. And I think this is where I would start to like poke and prod at Don was in so many ways has changed, the trajectory of your family's life and how you show up. So I was always kind of at you about your own emotion. Like, okay, you're showing up in every other way. Like you're that dad, like you're there all the time. You're the coach, for all these things. But like, how are you there emotionally? and not just for your son, but for you.
Yeah.
So you talk about, I want to go back, we're going to come back to this. But you had mentioned football was an outlet for you. And so you found a way to, in a way, maybe forget, suppress what had happened, channel that into something else.
You ever watch the movie Waterboy?
Yeah.
So basically what I did in my mind was I envisioned I was going up against my father every single play, my entire life. So that's literally how I outletted all that anger, all that, frustration that I had. I legitimately did that.
Wow.
So that was but and I hate to say it, that's what drove me when I was a kid, was that anger, emotion. That it wasn't, I couldn't tap into happiness and all that other stuff. I just didn't.
Right. Well, and that's
wasn't an option for me.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what we've talked about, is like suppressing these emotions. And we've talked about, you're very good at channeling your anger and aggression. Like you do that at the gym and you do sports, but it was all the other stuff of like the sadness from that, allowing yourself to like really feel that, when you look back at that and this loss of this childhood, like I don't even have memories of my childhood, let alone pleasantness or like a fondness of it. Like you just didn't even have that. And there's grief around that, especially when you are now seeing the experiences that your son is getting because you're choosing different. Like there is this period of grieving that in a sense. And like you said, and also on the other part is joy. But when ego shut that down immediately because, hey, don't ever get your hopes up, buddy.
Yeah.
Because you're likely going to get disappointed.
I asked my kid the other day, I said, do you ever dream? Like, do you have a dream of what you want to be when you grow up? And he's 11 years old, so he's still got that football player aspect, in his mind, or baseball or whatever, and I looked him right in the eye. I said, I didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
I'm like, you hold on to that, because you don't know, when you lose that, I mean, it's gone forever.
Yeah.
So I'm legitimately trying to give him everything I didn't have.
Yeah.
And not just materials, but everything else that goes with it,
Well, it's conversations like that. Like that to me is worth so much more than stuff. Like to have deep, meaningful conversations where you're making sure like you see your son and accepting him for all the parts of who he is, right?
Yep.
The football player in him, that's easy for you to resonate with, but kids have emotions, right?
Yep.
And so if he's sad, like that's going to challenge you. That's going to trigger you.
Well, that's the hardest emotion for me.
I think that's where we got to look at
that, and crying.
Yes.
I have I have a hard time with crying.
Yeah. I distinctly remember this conversation at the gym because I said, your son is here to teach you how to feel these other emotions because he needs you to accept him when he has these emotions.
Yep.
But he's going to help you learn that they are safe for you to feel too. But they don't. They maybe still don't.
Not publicly anyway.
Right. And
maybe in the shower, there's something else now where nobody can see it.
For like they are.
Yeah. No. I don't know. I don't think my tear ducts work very well. I think that's the issue.
It's a log jam.
Yep.
But even stuff like this, like you just being able to talk about it is helping clear some of that. And because that's real. And I think your inner child like needs you to really feel that like, dude, this was sad. Like this was hard. And like, there's a lot of anger there. Yeah. And you've found a way to channel that. That makes you want to go back to high school because didn't you get injured at some point?
Oh yeah. My senior year, I slipped 2 discs my neck. Second game into the season, and I lost my whole senior year.
What did that do to you?
Oh, it killed me. At that age, though, I figured out that I wasn't gonna be, professional football player or anything like that. I was planning on going to do plumbing for a career, and It's 2007, so nobody was hiring at all. So I couldn't get a job after I did all the schooling stuff that I had to do, the testing for it. But I wasn't getting any D1 scholarships offers or anything like that, and we didn't have any damn money, so I wasn't gonna go walk onto a school. So I knew right then and there that it was done. I was over. So it was a lot for me to process, but
how did you process that?
Worked.
Yeah.
Literally worked. That's all I did. So that's the only way I made it through. I have agreed for money, I guess. I don't know. It was just something to get my mind off of everything. It's just.
Well, it's also another way to like change your circumstances, right? And
I watched my mom do that forever.
You go back to what's wrong. Like
she literally worked 2 jobs my entire upbringing. She never not until she stopped working 2 full-time jobs when I was 25 or something like that.
Wow.
So, that and her patience for anything really got real thin for anything. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting though that you didn't like spiral the other way when that happened.
Oh, that I didn't do the drugs and drinking thing. For some reason, I liked to party and everything when I was a kid, when I was younger, but I got it out of my system real fast. I think it's more I get bored with shit really easily. I don't know why. I didn't stick with it because it's not like I didn't have fun doing it with the few friends that I had, but I don't know what the deal was, why I didn't become an alcoholic or what.
Because you easily could have.
Oh yeah.
Easily could have.
It was the wrong way. And I'll be honest with you, I have a friend I went to school with, and he grew up real damn similar to my situation. We both went through the same thing, and he went that direction. And I talked to him a while back, and he's like, you don't know how lucky you got it, but he's like, I just remember having conversations with my mom about your mom being up your ass about everything, just constantly just yelling at me about everything, it was just the littlest shit. And I think a lot of it had to do with she had no patience because she was working all the time, lack of sleep, but part of me feels like that's why I didn't go that direction, because I always had someone riding me, constantly in my ear.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? So,
because in a way, again, like however you take that or however your ego takes that was her way of showing that she cared.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
Ooh, that brings me to the story from football, you being a coach, and the difference in being seen, and again, attention's attention. And even if your mom's riding you, like that is her form of caring and making sure you're getting work done, you're doing this, and it may not come off the best, but at least that's her paying attention to you. Whereas sometimes the kids are like, hello, do we even see me here? Do we even notice that I'm here? Like, what else do I gotta do? And so sometimes like ego will say, hey, getting yelled at is better than being ignored.
Yeah.
And so that was, I had mentioned earlier that not only is your purpose to like be this family man that you are now, which again, looking at you, people be like, what?
Yeah.
Well, you're literally always with your family. When you're not at the gym or at work, like you are with your family.
And we don't have, like, she doesn't go out with the girls and I don't go out with the guys. Like if, really my cousin had a wedding not too long ago and they didn't want any kids. And they're like, we don't know kids or whatever. And I'm like, all right, well, if my kid's not invited, I'm not invited. That's just the way I am. Like, that's just,
And now you can understand a lot more that way, because to you, like, leaving him behind
yeah,
can kind of bring you right back to that 5 or 6-year-old boy who got left behind. And it's like, I'm not leaving my kid. Like, it's that important for me, for him to be here and experience life with us.
right.
Yeah.
Now that he's getting older and he's wanting to do, sleepovers and stuff with his friends and whatever, I mean, that's my mind. If he asked me to do that, go for it, because I never was able to do that. So it's like, be a kid,
Right.
go for it. It gives me and the wife time. We can go on a date or whatever, you know? But yeah,
well, that's also cool that he has a whole different level of feeling safe in his home versus what you did, because oftentimes, like, if kids don't have that, it's really hard for them to go out and like have that form of independence or like individuality where they want to go out and do that kind of stuff. Like, it's hard for them to leave home base. And we kind of talked about that even impacting you as an adult, like going places where you have to spend a night somewhere else. Like, that's very triggering for you.
Yep. I do not like staying in hotels. I don't like not being in my own bed. And a lot of that has to do with me being a kid and not getting to sleep in my own bed.
Right.
I'd have to sleep at the neighbor's house when I was, before 7 or 8 years old. And the only reason why I was able to sleep there is because they're right across the street. And then we moved, and then there's nobody. And all right, you're home alone.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm 8.
Great.
I remember watching the Super Bowl it was the 96 Super Bowl that the Packers won. And I was up watching that game
by yourself
in the living room.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting though, like how you don't remember much, but you remember that exact detail?
Stupid stuff like that. Yeah.
Stuff like that's your inner child being like that. Those are those core memories that get locked in, and there's something there. Like, that to me is like being able to sit in that emotion and like feel the sadness of that. Like, the heck, I'm 8 years old. Like, I should be watching this with.
Yeah, your family.
Yeah.
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 But I didn't know any different.
Right.
I was watching Reggie White get 2 sacks in a row on Drew Bledsoe.
And the fact that you remember that is like, what?
Yeah. People I remember that one that are big pack.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, I'll give that to you. But, well, so let's talk about you as a coach, because we've had this conversation where I have said to you, like, I feel like part of your story is so you can help see these kids, because you never know why a kid is there, if they want to be there, or what they're going through when they show up for practice. And I feel like you have this unique ability to be able to see what kids aren't saying. And like, you pick up on that. You're very intuitive. And even like sometimes at the gym, like, you'll know when I'm in a funky mood, and we'll know either just like, ooh, don't mess with her, or when to say something, or when to give me shit, or when to push me, because you know how to read people. And that's because of your childhood too, when you always had to read the room to assess, what mood is so-and-so in.
Right.
You have taken that into your adult life, and now you can use that as a coach to really help see these kids. And I think that is one of the gifts from your painful package. So you guys had shared a story one day that helped me get through a very heavy leg press, because it fired me up so much, and I was a little irate. But
yeah, we had a kid that I don't think he necessarily wanted to be there. I think his dad was living through his life, because he played football, so he thought his kid had to.
Please don't do that.
I'm very much against that.
Yes.
Because especially a contact sport that's like that, you're gonna get them hurt.
Right.
And my job as a coach is to protect them so they don't get hurt. If they do not want to be there, why would I put them on the field?
Right.
And then at the same token, the parents are paying for them to be there.
Right.
So it puts me in a very tough position to put a kid out there, not put him out there, put him in a position where he's not going to get hurt. So we ended up actually put this kid in a position where he didn't see a ton of contact. We didn't, put him in certain positions you'd see a lot of contact, you know, and it was more to protect him because he just wasn't fully engaged.
Yeah.
You know, and slowly talking to him and talking to my son who's in the same class as him, I mean, there's some real neglect going on in the home because he had an older sister that's really into sports and she's really good, I guess. Like she'll probably end up going to a Division I school or something for softball. And he was just fighting for attention from mom and dad. And what got you fired up was it was our last game, and Megan is a special needs teacher at the same school as my son. And this mother of this child we're talking about, she is also in special needs in a different school district. And they were talking, and basically the mom said that her kid's a pussy in the conversation. Yeah. And it's really hard to hear parents say that. And it's one thing if, like, I'm seeing as an individual group that, you know, you're having a mess of kids acting like a mess of girls, you know what I mean? You're trying to get them to shift their energy in a different direction. You're not telling them that they're weak or whatever. They're just like, you know, quit playing grab ass, let's go. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, you know, so it's like, you just can work things a little bit differently. And I got to learn from it too. Like,
for sure.
I'm horrible with that. And with letting F-bombs slip at, you know, practice, but like I'm legitimately trying to work on it. And it's not easy.
Well, and there's so many things about that story because you're right. Here is this kid who his parents, because he basically told you didn't want to be there. Like,
well, he told us like the first or second week of pads that he's like, we asked him, I was like, do you want to be here?
Yeah.
Like, cause you're not like hardly participating. You're pulling yourself out of drills and everything. And he goes, no, my parents are forcing me to be here. And I'm like, I will talk to your parents. If you want me to talk to your parents, I will stick up for you. I will talk to them, but it has to be okay with you. He goes, no, I'll just get yelled at home or whatever. And I said, all right, how about you play center? They can't hit you until your head's up and nobody ever lines up over you. You don't play defense because you're not going to get hit, and you can be all-time center. He's like, okay. Well, as the season progressed, he saw how much fun defense actually was. Last game of the season, he's like, we're up by like 48-0. I'm not kidding you. Our kids are really good. And he's like, can I play defense? Go for it. I said, you get hurt. It's not on me. You know. And he goes and he's made some plays. He got some excitement out of him. So I think he legitimately started to enjoy it as the season went on and kind of had the brotherhood of team, you know. With me, I think what you're alluding to is, I'm very rough around the edges with the kids. I'm very stern, but I got a couple simple rules. You follow them. I ain't going to be yelling at you. I ain't going to get on you.
Right.
As soon as we follow those rules, we're going to attack it. We're going to, we're going to fix it.
Right.
But I'm the first person to get on you, but I'm the first person to congratulate you. Yeah. So that's the difference between me and everybody else.
Right. Not just criticizing, Right.
So
also see when they have made the change,
Right.
are improving.
Yep.
And that is so key. But it's interesting that, you know, you kind of mentioned how your mom was always on you.
Yeah.
Like, in a way, it's like, oh,
Saying that.
I found that I use that same tactic here. But again, you're doing it in a way like it's in that this does go to show, because you had made this comment about this kid once that you couldn't figure out like why, because you were hard on him.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, it's because you care, because the fact that you are kind of riding him and like wanting him to do better and expecting more of him, like to him, he's like, oh my gosh, like this guy actually sees me. He actually wants me to do better. He actually thinks I have potential.
Yeah.
Where you were like, gosh, I'm just being hard. I'm like, no, Don, like this is actually much bigger than that.
Assholes.
But there was actually so much more of that. And I wanted him to see that. Like, no. You are helping this kid feel seen, because again, maybe at home he's not, because he could never live up to his sister. He could never live up to his dad. So why even bother? Why even try? I'll just be here just to make him happy.
Yeah.
When you can see, like, this is not what is lighting this kid up. This is not, but it did, like, eventually, because you started to pull things out of him, put him in a situation where he could be successful, to then see other opportunities. You know, and that's where I think, again, as a coach, like, you have this unique ability to be able to see that, and that there is so much more, and that this kid wasn't just being lazy. He wasn't, like, there was more to that.
Yeah. Yeah, because you know, if you look at it just on the surface, it's like,
yeah,
like you want to see he plays football.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not necessarily, you know, wanting to put in the work that the rest of the team puts in, you know.
Right.
You know, but at the same time, I have to treat them fairly.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because you don't show up, you don't do the drills. I can't.
Yep.
I got kids that are,
right,
you know, putting in the effort. Like, just put in the effort.
Right.
Play. I have no issue with that.
Well, and when kids find like a mentor like that actually does notice if you didn't show up or if you didn't put in your effort, and they notice that, like, they are going to want to do better and start showing up more. And it was kind of cool that you ended up seeing that happen over the season.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, what fired me up so much was the mother's comment, but for a lot of reasons, because it's classic ego, in that it says things to deflect. Like, if I say the worst possible thing about myself, then when someone else says it, it won't hurt as much. Well, she did that to her son.
Yeah.
And so who knows what her story was, you know, growing up, and whether she was ever criticized playing sports or whatever it was, and never feeling good enough or being made fun of. And so in that case, she's like, well, I'll say something about my kid, because I think you guys said there was a play where he kind of came up and like flailing his arms, like, oh, whatever, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And so she's like worried about what everyone else is thinking about her son. It's like, I'm just going to say it. So that way, if they're actually thinking it, like I've already said it and put it out there, like, whoa. Like, this is your own stuff.
It's kind of like the guy who calls himself fat all the time.
Yeah, we got one of those at the gym that eventually I'll get him on the podcast sometime. See if he listens to this one. Like, I want to star this episode for you to watch. But yeah, like it's that self-deprecation. Like, I will be and I'm like classic of this, or used to be, where I would say the worst, most horrendous things to myself, because it was easier. I thought if I say this beforehand, then it won't hurt as much if someone else is thinking it or saying it. And oftentimes they weren't. So I literally became my own worst bully.
Yeah.
And that's like
some people do that to push themselves too, you know, try to push them through their shit or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I'll drive a long ways to a job, and it's like 100 degrees outside, like right now.
Yeah.
And you sit there and you're like, God, I don't want to do this. And then you say, quit being a bitch and let's get, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's got to be a small hint of that, you know, inside you to try to push you to do this.
Yeah. Absolutely. There is a range, right? And it just depends on where the pendulum swings. Is if you're always at the extremes, it often doesn't work out well for you. Even if you're at the extreme where you are like, you know, this like chronic overachiever, well, guess what? That leads to burnout, and like you're likely not experiencing any joy or anything. So there isn't a balance. And even with ego, like if we can have a healthy sense of ego, you can use something like that to motivate you in the right direction.
Exactly.
But that's where so many of us do not have that healthy balance yet. Ego is still very much in the driver's seat, still being the bully, and to where that it tends to not motivate us. Like for me, that kind of stuff almost like shuts me down even more. Like instead of like knowing I've got this work to do, I will like freeze about it, or I'll get so overwhelmed that I can't do anything.
So how do you push through it?
I think one, I have to recognize like where like that sense of overwhelm is coming from. And again, I think back to childhood stuff where things always seem so daunting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you have like, oh, a friend's coming over, I got to clean the house, you know, like, oh, you better clean the entire house in 2 hours, you know, like, huh, and I would just freeze. So even just like cleaning up around my place now,
Yep.
it feels like, well, you got to do it all in 2 hours, you know, like, no, I don't.
So is that bedroom back there cleaning things?
Actually, it's like I deserve a clean space, but it's for me, like seeing a mountain of things like that could completely paralyze me. So it's like I almost have to like, okay, just one thing at a time. Because again, like what kid, I think about this even in college, or you know, everyone's gonna be starting school here pretty soon. Like you get the syllabus for the whole semester. I would see that as like, oh my gosh, I have to do all of this right now. And I would like freak out to the point where I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. Like, I'm going to have to drop out of college. Like, I would literally go into that feeling of like, I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. I'm not whatever enough. I was like, well, Tammy, these things aren't due until this is just 1 week, 2 weeks. Like, I literally have to break it down into like smaller incremental things for me to do so I don't get shut down like that. So
that's where it helps to be simple-minded like me.
Well, I wish I have like 1,000 tabs open in my brain all the time. Where it's like, I wish that's just a guy thing where it's just like you got one tab open.
No, let's just get one thing done at a time. Like just finish this one thing here, do this here. Megan will do the same thing where she'll look at all the stuff she's got to do and freak out, and it's like just do one thing at a time. It'll be fine. Like I can't remember where I heard this quote, but you have this mountain of life, right? And our job is to move the mountain just over here. It doesn't matter for what reason. Some days you have a spoon, some days you have an excavator, some days you got a shovel. Some days are better than others, but you're still making progress because regardless, you have a spoon, you're still making progress.
Right.
You know what I mean? Some days you make more progress than others. And that really, if you can literally adapt that, it'll simplify everything for you and just slow down. You'll be all right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I kind of like turned my therapy around on me here. Huh. No, like I'm thinking about that though, is for me. And I think, so Andrea, who I worked with when I did my whole rebrand and stuff, kind of help point this out too, is that when she would give me a task and I wasn't getting it done, it wasn't because I was being lazy or whatever. It was because it was triggering a wound. It was triggering my worthiness wound, or it was triggering something. And so now when I do feel like I'm blocked about something, I know enough now, like, okay, I can just go right to ego. Like, okay, what are you trying to like, oh, it's this fear of perfection. Or if I have to reach out to, someone like to sponsor the podcast, like it's fear of rejection. So I'm not getting through my to-do list of emails to send out because my fear of rejection is like blaring at me in the moment. So I have to then give my inner child a little pep talk and be like, they're not rejecting you. Like it may just not be a lot, like just, so I have to go through that kind of dialogue. Like for you, just saying Don, don't be a little bitch works for you.
No.
Hopefully that it's not triggering little Don, but
I don't think so.
Well, yeah.
That's how we get through things.
Time will tell. So what would you, I do remember something that we had talked about last time. Is it kind of maybe how we ended it was because there's a lot of families, there's a lot of stuff going on in people's homes that you don't know about. And I say the same thing to Aria with kids in her class. Like you don't know what's going on in their home. You don't know what they're trying to cover up, when they come to school. You don't know that this, kid who's being the class clown, or this kid who's always being a troublemaker, or a kid making fun of people. Like you don't know what's going on in their home to make them come to school and be that way. But we also talked about, as a kid, from your perspective as a kid growing up in a home where there was a lot of turmoil, and how the parents, even after the separation, how they communicated or didn't, and how that impacted you. And like, if a family is going through a separation or something like that, like, what would you tell them to be able to help them with their kid and going through that?
So to the parents, quit putting your kids in the middle of your shit.
Yeah.
Right. It's not their fault that you guys can work it out. And it's not, just one party or the other. Like, it takes two for things to work and not work. Right. When you do split and that doesn't work out, the kids are going to know, what is going on. They're going to figure it out when they get older. If mom or dad are a piece of shit or whatever, you may come out and say that, dad he's a worthless loser or whatever.
Yeah.
The kid will figure that out on his own. Right. You don't need to fill his head or her head with that, with that garbage. They'll figure that out.
Right.
So you keeping them from them, you're hurting that kid more than you're hurting the adult. So quit doing that. I'm so tired of hearing, the dad's not in so-and-so's life. And deep down, I know that there's more to it than that.
Right.
You know what I mean? That it's just, it's not fair for the kid. Right. And if you are going through that, you got to fight against it. You got to not just back down and not show up for your kids. If anything out of this whole conversation, if I can get anyone to understand, is just showing up makes a huge difference.
Yep.
And then on the other hand of that, for the kids that have gone through that or are going through that, it's not your fault. Please understand that you have nothing to do with your parents getting through whatever they've got going on. It's just that there's sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Well, right. And it's when you have two people that have their own unhealed childhood wounds now coming together, and like you said, even your son triggered you in a different way, but that's going to open up so many other things, and they're going to trigger each other. But if you don't learn about yourself and heal your own stuff, you're going to keep triggering each other to where that happens, and never know how to look at that. Okay, what is this trying to show me that I need to heal within myself? Why am I so emotionally reactive? But as adults, we have to take responsibility to heal our stuff, so we're not passing it down to our kids. So we aren't putting them in the middle of those things. So we are keeping our promises to them. So we are showing up, not just physically, but emotionally too, to say, hey, your dad didn't show up. I bet that was really hard. Do you want to talk about it? And you might say no, but just to even have the opportunity to talk about it could have been a game changer. But now we can see that your mom already had her own blocks and her own wounds and couldn't provide that space for you.
Yeah, I have a huge amount of respect for people that are going through a separation or whatever, and they do have kids, and they're able to kind of shield their kids from that. You're never going to fully shield them. The kids are going to know that mom and dad's relationship is not the same as Johnny's at school or whatever. And that's not a big deal.
Right.
It really isn't. Once you get past that, it's okay. But if you got both parents in your life, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters at that point.
Well, say too that it's not necessarily the actual event that creates childhood trauma. It's how they were supported emotionally when they experienced that. So if you would have had some emotional safety around you when all that happened, that might have changed how you viewed that whole experience, you know? And Krista last week had talked about, you know, when she was first assaulted in, I think it was in 6th grade, you know, she came home and didn't tell anyone because you didn't talk about stuff growing up. And so if she could have been emotionally supported in that moment, that could have changed the trajectory of her entire life. But instead, every time something happened, she never told anybody and just suppressed it even more to the point where it was like physically impacting her entire body, where she would literally shut down, like her body would shut down every time she was triggered. And so it's like, it's not necessary. Things are going to happen, right?
Yep.
You know, families are going to separate, you know, there's going to be unfortunate things that just happen that are out of our control, but how can you be there emotionally to support your kids through that? Because that is what can change how they view that traumatic event and being emotionally supported around it. And that's what
everybody's got their own shit, right?
Truly, they do.
Everybody's got their own things they're working through.
Yeah.
Right. One person's got a perfect life.
No. And the ones that look like they do,
they got the most rings.
Well, and that's part of this. Is like, I know, you know, Corby as well, and he was on here and shared his story, and like that dude's childhood was the next level as well, like very different, right? But you both had very traumatic childhoods growing up, and I'm sitting over here like, well, gosh, but it's how you are interpreting that, how you felt emotionally supported through that, like that can change everything. And again, like it's just very, I don't know what the word is, but refreshing doesn't sound like the right word. Like to be surrounded by people who are doing the work, who look at their own stuff, to heal their stuff so that way they can show up better for their families, for their communities, for whatever. And that's like what I want this podcast to be about, is like,
but maybe you didn't have to go through as much trauma or whatever for other people to be able to, because we're dumping our shit on you every day.
Part of it was like, so many people I work with, they came from the Leave It to Beaver family, and they have a whole different set of childhood wounds.
Yeah.
Because there was so much pressure to be perfect, or so much pressure to like look like they had it all together all the time, when they just wanted to like crumble. Whereas sometimes when life is in shambles, it's like, well, it is what it is. Like, so it's very different. So you're right. Everybody has some form of childhood wounds. How you receive them is very different. How you dealt with them is very different. How they show up in your adult life is very different. But it is everyone's responsibility to heal it, so you're not passing it down. And so I see you and Megan doing that work. And so I'm just like grateful for the way that you show up for your son, the way you show up for each other. And like I said, in the way you show up for the people that you care about. And so I'm just going to include myself as one of those people. And, oh, I didn't get salsa tonight. So thumbs up that I can be one of those people.
Yep. We're the only couple that have had no salsa. So
So he will.
It's real salsa. It's not code word for something stupid, just so you know.
It's legit smoked salsa that, yes. But thank you so much for sharing your story. And you were much less nervous this time. That was good.
I don't know about that one.
We needed a take 2. Not when we did it, because the first time was gold. So, but
well, this wasn't gold.
Felt terrible. He got done, and I went back to play the audio, and he laughed. And I was like, "Oh no!" And yeah, that was a hard one.
Keep the jokes to ourselves this time.
Yeah.
Or should we make the joke?
What's the joke?
Is there going to be audio?
He laughed. I said, "Oh, my worst fear is that I don't have audio." And then he laughed. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have audio." So no, we're not going to manifest that tonight. We have audio. I can see the little things moving, little green lights over there. So we did it.
Good.
Hurrah. And now little Don feels seen and heard and validated in his story. So look at all the healing that's happening. Look at all the healing you're letting in.
All right, turn it off.
Done here.
We're done.
All right, thank you. I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning at the gym.
Yes, you will.
All right. Peace out, man.
Yeah.
Bye.